anyone who's aspiring to be a CMO, so maybe like a head of or a senior marketeer, what advice would you give them to get to the top?
So look for the thing that, and I think the CMO role should be split like that, but you should hire partners. At the end of the day, the consumer doesn't give two hoots what's going on behind the scenes.
So in terms of CMO challenges, like what's your biggest pet peeve at the moment? Is it the restructuring piece?
Am I allowed to say the word?
So thanks, Gemma, for coming to the second podcast for Digital Cheesecake.
My pleasure.
So I was hoping you could just tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been up to recently and that sort of thing.
Oh gosh, well, my background, I've been in the world of marketing for going on 20 years, I think. I started out originally as a financial journalist.
Oh, cool.
And then I was like, I did that for a couple of years. And then there was this whole thing at the time called new media. That's how long ago it was. And I thought, I think I should do that. And I went and I started work at a startup back in the day called Schoolsnet. With education, I was interested in education, and fell into the marketing role from there in the most like kind of early days of digital you could ever imagine, where they gave me $100,000 that they just raised and said, okay, figure out how to get us into schools. So fast forward,
I love that, how you got
the
brief. That's the brief.
Yeah, that was the brief.
Cool.
So it was amazing. And fast forward 10 years or so, and that's how I got into, digital performance marketing. Got very interested in data. And then I went to a company called Book a Table.
Oh, yeah.
Which was restaurant reservations. And that's really where it all kind of began for me in my mind. It always takes about 10 years, I would think, to really find your groove in a career. And so I did Book a Table for a while. That was super exciting, VC backed.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff.
Some of my greatest friends there, who I still see to this day. And then I went off to Auction Technology Group, which is an auction's been another marketplace. And then kind of like, I did a sort of CMO roles. I was CMO there. Then I was CMO at a company called Pentland. No, sorry, not CMO, Group Director of Digital and Innovation at a company called
love the
Pentland.
big titles.
I know, that was a good
Growth.
title.
Yeah.
And that was a super exciting job because that was portfolio, taking
I
lots
love
of
that
brands,
stuff.
working with lots of really amazing other, brand specialists.
Cool.
Because I was a digital person and building a centre of excellence. And the last role that I was doing was building kind of like another centre of excellence, but specialising in e-commerce at a WPP agency.
Oh my God, I love WPP.
Very diverse. And that's the beauty of sort of the world of kind of digital and go-to-market, is that you can really spread your wings in so many different directions.
I love that. So you've done like agency clients.
Agency, clients,
I feel like everyone's doing that.
VC.
Why not? I mean, I think it's so transferable,
Yeah.
but some people don't think it is. I just think 100% in those areas.
I think it's really transferable. But the other thing is, it's like, also, I did a stint at SAP, so a big tech business, right? There's nothing like seeing under the hood of businesses. Do you know what I mean? And seeing what's going on, and you understand them, what are their motivations. So wherever you end up, you're always going to be working with a tech business, a go-to-market, a group of go-to-market people. Probably, if you're in e-commerce, clearly you'll have, e-commerce capabilities and big and sort of tech stacks and stuff. And understanding the motivations that drive people, if you as a CMO, makes it much easier really to build the right kind of team and capability around you and be successful. Yeah. And also just, the variety of kind of context switching like that.
I mean, it's also challenging having all that diversity. Yeah. It means you've got that experience of it's challenging, right? Whereas some people are like, let's hire someone in tech for SAP, and they're like, well, actually, no, you could have someone from X, Y, and Z background that may have a different perspective.
It does bring a different perspective, and you bring in, like, I've learned so much from everyone, every role and everyone I've worked with, and then you kind of synthesize those ideas and then you bring them to where you're going next. You know what I mean? And particularly if you go from like brand and consumer into a tech business like Microsoft or SAP or Google, you're bringing in that industry experience, and you can kind of walk in those shoes. So I've really enjoyed being able to kind of navigate and, sort of switch up over the years. And that's been the beauty of being part of a kind of a CMO in a digital scene over 20 odd years. Really, it's just been such an amazing revolution and kind of time of innovation. So I've loved that.
How has that role changed in the last 20 years, do you think?
Well, I don't know, 20 years ago I wasn't a CMO. I was like,
with CMOs, they were there. But
I was a lowly marketing executive, just trying to work out what the hell was going on.
Working the ranks.
Exactly. Doing my CIM certificate and whatever.
You did
and
that.
IDM and all of that. But I think it's changed. The role of you'll probably know this, that the average tenure of a CMO is like
short, isn't it?
18 months to 2 years.
Pretty crazy. Even shorter in the last year, or like...
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously it depends a lot on the type of business you're working for.
Yep.
Being a CMO in a venture PE-backed business is totally different to being in a corporate, right? And the scale, the processes, the complexity changes a lot. I've always thought about CMOs, they're extremely broad wherever you go, because you can have everything. So in an e-commerce context, like at Pentland, I had, everything from kind of merchandising and D2C right through to kind of analytics and then the digital marketing piece.
It's a huge remit.
And so it's a big old remit, and it was multi-market. But I've always thought that, the brand element of being a CMO was so important, building a strong, memorable, engaging, authentic brand that people can kind of connect with. But then you've got the other side of the coin, which is the whole technical piece. Like being a CMO is extremely technical because you're dealing with now technology, data, AI. How do you use all of that to bring that brand
That's
to
what I
life,
find like a controversial topic on that one, because I've worked with some CMOs, and it's nice that you're saying they've got a broad spectrum, but I've worked with some that are like not digital first at all.
Yeah.
So like, how do you upskill where like you said that you've also upskilled in digital and everything else, but I've had some CMOs that are so brand heavy, and then you've got PE-backed companies where they're like, we just want you to deliver results now, and you're like, well, actually there's a full scale.
You see, I tell you what, this probably is a little bit controversial. I think the role's too big, and I think what you should do is you should hire partners. Like in agencies, you have what they kind of traditionally call the creative and the suit. Yeah. And I think that the CMO role should be split like that, but you should hire partners. Do you know what I mean?
You need partners for sure.
When you say partners, is that like strong seconds, like a head of analytics, a head of marketing?
No, I mean like you almost like a job share. So you hire someone who's like a really strong brand strategist, but creative thinker who can do that sort of that brand piece, and then you have kind of hand in hand working together. You've got the more sort of digitally technically oriented CMO which is probably a little bit more where I
crucial.
skew. Yeah. But you have to work together, because at the end of the day, the consumer doesn't give two hoots what's going on behind the scenes.
No, but there's a lot of politics behind the scenes.
To connect with the brand, and they want the product they want when they want it, where they want it. But that's extremely difficult to do in a kind of cohesive way. And it's a lot. I think it's a lot to ask of one person.
I think it's a lot now, for
maybe
sure.
a bit controversial, but who knows? Maybe
I do agree. I haven't seen a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong as well,
Yeah.
because you'd be on the hiring front with CMOs.
Everyone's so different though.
Everyone's different, though. Different experiences.
I was saying this to you the other day. You either come from a trading background, brand, digital, online, and really your skill set can be really broad, but you just don't know who you're going to be.
And they're expecting someone to fit the whole mold.
Exactly.
But you're like, when did that happen?
Yeah, you do. You've got to be pretty kind of multi-pronged. Do you know what I mean? You have to be able to kind of, I think the word, but you do have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to problem
This is the
solve
priority.
very quickly.
Yeah, totally.
And you also need to know who you need to put around you.
Yeah.
So the team is like, actually, it's a truism. It's the most important thing. But even with all of that being said, I still think that businesses would be more successful if they looked at the CMO role as a kind of pairing. Do you know what I mean?
But some of these, again, controversial, but some of these businesses aren't, like the CEOs aren't marketeers in that sense. So like they're kind of like, to HR, what do we do? What do we hire for this? And they're like, we don't really know. So everyone's really trying to figure it out, and they're kind of like, this is, again, it could be wrong, but there's a lot of consultant stuff coming in where people are telling them, okay, this is probably what the structure should look like. And then you come in as a CMO, or, you come in as contracting, whatever, and then they keep you forever. But they kind of don't know sometimes.
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know. And I think, one of the shifts, to come back to what you're saying, is there's definitely a shift now. We're in kind of, more challenging times, certainly, in the UK and the European market, where, on paper, one of the easiest things to do is to get rid of some of, the CMO.
The CMO.
Or those
and that's what we're seeing,
people,
especially
right?
in the last 12 months. Yeah.
So, yeah, there are definitely different ways to kind of build out a team and pull in that expertise, at key points in a process. But someone somewhere has got to be orchestrating.
Oh,
and
100%.
You guys know how complex it is. You've got multiple touch points, multiple channels. You've got
but then you've got a team that
technology
need
to
direction.
take care of. You may or may not have a team. Even if you got rid of your team because Gen AI is doing all the job now,
yes.
you still have to figure out. Otherwise, it's crap in, crap out. To those models. So like. It's I think a bit of an expert is better than none of an expert, you know what I mean? But I think ultimately, it's evolving. I don't have any sort of what's the word, like great pronouncements to make on where it's going to end up, because we're definitely in a period of shift for sure.
What do you think?
Where do you think it's going to end up, though? Because a lot of CMOs, CDOs are becoming CEOs, COOs, and MDs. So
dropping those C's.
Well, I think
a lot of CFOs are going to be upset, but it's a nice trend to see, isn't it?
Well, it is. And this is like one of my pet peeves over the years has been this sort of slightly illogical rule that people who came up through a go-to-market or marketing route just couldn't be CEOs, right?
I do, yeah. And what was that about?
Someone actually said that to me recently. He was like, "Well, you can't be a CEO because that just doesn't happen." I don't think that's as true as it was, but I still think there's a bit of a kind of preconception. And historically, it was always the case that CEOs came either up through a sales route, and it is incredibly important to have done a sales job or finance. Or now what's interesting is you're seeing CEOs come from more of a product route, so product development.
True.
Okay, yeah.
Very true.
As, kind of tech becomes a bit more central really to almost anything. And I think that's really interesting. So you're starting actually to see more women come through, because obviously a lot of women go, that there is I believe there is a gender bias in towards women in product, which is brilliant to see. Yeah.
What are you finding or seeing? Some of the clients that you're working with?
I'm like, it's a bit hard because yes, agency side, then I was client side. My previous client role, it was like, who's going to go for CEO position? Is it going to be finance? Is it going to be marketing? I think finance is like, yes, is one element, but marketing is such a sole function. Like when I started my career, it was digital, etc., and everyone we were trying to convince them pretty much on digital. And now it's like in marketing, it's so fundamental, but there are still people that believe that marketing is fluff, and that is like.
I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. But I think you've got to have a kind of, at least a point of view if you go into a CMO role about how you're going to kind of weave the criticality that is brand and creativity with the performance element.
Yes.
And you have to understand how you are going to drive performance through brand. So like, everyone talks about performance brand or brand performance. I can't remember which one it is.
I know.
And you really do have to know how you're going to do that and how you're actually going to figure out where are the gaps, how do you plug them, and how do all your channels all kind of sort of drive each other, and you can do that through attribution and MMMs and lots of different things. But ultimately keeping the kind of the soul of the brand at the heart of the messaging and the creativity, and then measuring that. You've got to have a point of view on that stuff. Otherwise it gets hard.
Coming back to, your question you asked about the clients, I actually don't work with a lot of the CMOs because they've been removed, but the strategy is like gone. So it's actually a real problem. So I believe it's crucial to have them. I was going to ask you that question, is fundamental, but I still believe it's fundamental because you need the strategic element. Like I'm talking with CEOs, but they have absolutely no time to deal with the actual, obviously it's real problems marketing, but they have I'm like, this is actually all the issues in the business now. I think you probably need someone else that I should be working with directly versus like...
So you're saying you think the strategy brain is kind of being removed.
It's being removed and it's like, let's do stuff now. It's
just really tactical.
And I'm like, I've had one client that I'm like, great, they've got a temporary CMO, because there's so many are temporary, etc. And then they're like, we need you fundamental. They're all nervous about like, should we have a CMO? And then most of them I've got now, they come in and they shake everything up because they've been like, this is their role. They need to come in and shake things up, and then they actually need to make fundamental change now, which I think is even harder, right?
Yeah, and you see, I think that you've got to be careful there because if you come in, especially if there hasn't been a sort of leader in place for a while, and I've done that, and I've gone into roles where either there's been a big change, so there hasn't been any leadership, or, you know, it's taken a while to fill the role, or the role was brand new. It's a really good idea not to go in and shake it up immediately. And kind of, I mean, there's always a pressure to kind of deliver your 90-day plan and to show results, but it's a really good idea to, you know, my thing is always like, talk to everyone, like literally from the, you know, the youngest, the intern, to, you know, the person in the warehouse, to whatever, like absolutely everyone. Do that really, really quickly, and then just observe and watch and listen, because a lot of the time there'll be people in the team who know the answers. Even at the strategic level, they might not think of it as strategy, and they might not be able to frame it or have the experience to frame it to the board or the CEO in those terms. But like more often than not, the answers are already in the building, or, you know, in the clue. And what a CMO's job, part of what a CMO's job, or any leader's job, is to sort of, you know, kind of maximize the potential of the people who are already there, shape it, define, you know, and obviously bring something new as well, but bring that insight and that understanding. And just like listening and watching can get you a really long way. And then you find the talent, do you know what I mean? And you find those brilliant people who've been like tearing their hair out, or just quietly working away and not really, you know, sort of talking to too many people. So although I love to talk, actually, you know, it's good to just keep your mouth shut and just listen and watch as well, and see how people are interacting.
I know, but some people listening might be like, I have no time. I have absolutely no time. My boss has said I need results now, or you want to shake something up, you know? And that's like, you would know from a PE point of view, it's like the board next week,
absolutely,
pull spend here and pull spend here, you know, or make
totally cuts. But what I would say is that obviously both are not mutually exclusive, and that definitely the roles where I've kind of been successful have been the ones where early on you do your own due diligence. Like, you're not sitting in your ivory tower, you know, you do your own, let's say it's a D2C brand, you do your own audit physically. Like, I'm a whiz with the tools because I've done so much of those things. You'll usually find some kind of tactical opportunity, and any CMO listening will know, like, you can't be a snob about being tactical. And then what you do is you can make changes that can quite quickly you know, turn things around. Like one of them in one of the roles I was in, probably one of the best tactical things I ever, you know, and a lot of it is luck, if we're honest, was doing one of these audits and discovering that there was a massive no follow on, like, literally tens of thousands of products on this website. I'm not going to say which one. And by removing the no follow, right, anyone who's sort of knows about SEO will know all about this.
I'm like having a heart attack.
Literally, we increased traffic by about 90% overnight.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the reason they didn't want to have they put the no follow on was because these were products that were no longer available. But without going into too much detail, there was a way to solve that.
You could
problem,
make them available.
Right? There was a way to redirect those, and so we were able to massively increase reach very, very quickly. And this was a role with absolutely no marketing budget.
Yeah.
So you had to be able to work with what you had, and then we could build from there. Yeah. So, you know, sometimes just like looking at the detail, you can find those little opportunities that give the CEO and the board enough to know that you know, enough faith, because you're trying to build confidence and faith. But at the same time, you have to build confidence and faith with your teams, and you do that by listening and by watching and observing, and not sort of, you know, that thing of the hero CMO who comes in and sort of like says, it's okay, I'm here, I'll solve all the problems. That's a myth, firstly. And secondly, you completely undermine all the people around you when you do that. So, you know, I don't know. You've got to be able to do both. They're demanding jobs, you know.
Just going back to what you were saying about the 18 months, I would say on average every 18 months, you know.
I can't believe it's 18 months. Yeah. I mean, I've had some that were, I'm not going to name, but like, 3-6 months. I actually still think 18. Really? I think 18 short. No, I know. I've had some churn.
It takes you like the first year to really internalize the place you're in and embed and make the changes, and you need longer, but it's a very, very demanding role, which is why it's so exciting, right? And so interesting.
It is, don't get me wrong, but I find it must be hard and you might see it with people coming in and then either being let go, etc. Is there's just so much pressure from a CEO potentially because they've gotten it wrong, right? And they have to like rebuild, and now we don't have enough time and we need to redo it again. And so the pressure on the person is
there's a lot
enormous.
of pressure to succeed. I think sometimes you're inheriting a plan, an existing
plan.
Yeah,
exists.
And so, you are the kind of solution to delivering that plan in conjunction usually with the whole management team.
Yeah.
And sometimes, so it means you might not be in a position to rethink. And then other times you need to be able to actually go in and sort of make the case for maybe a slightly less ambitious plan, which is really difficult.
Yeah, making the case. I love that word. And they're like, okay, make the case for it. And you're like, okay, I've got 24 hours.
Yeah, well, I've got a track record of being totally overly ambitious, which is also an absolute thorn in my side. So, you can't win.
At least you're given a shot. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of, I guess, CMO challenges, like what's your biggest pet peeve at the moment that people are saying? It could be buzzwords or it can just be, is it the restructuring piece? There's so many.
Am I allowed to say the word AI? I don't know if I can say the word AI without just
everyone's mentioning
feeling a bit sick. But I think, I think that there's a sort of general anxiety around what Gen AI means. I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah.
We're absolutely in marketing seeing the impact of what that technology can do. If you're in performance marketing and the way that Google now or Facebook basically do everything, I think there's a lot of.
I mean, they do it, and then you put it into Google though, and it's like completely poor quality. Like some of the stuff we use.
Some of the quality is some of the quality is. So it takes. There's a lot of tuning.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the roles that sort of sit within that marketing sphere are going to change a lot because you're going to have tuners and engineers and things like that. But in terms of peeves, I mean, come back to what I said earlier. I think it's just being realistic about what a CMO is actually able to deliver. Do you know what I mean? Particularly in a very tight investment environment. But there's not really a peeve. Like there's always going to be limitations, right? And you just work around the limitations. So no, sorry, I can't think of anything really.
That's a positive marketeer response because some people are like, here's my list of all my pet peeves, because marketing can be challenging.
Far too agreeable. It is, but that's the fun of it. And basically everything has limitations. You've got to work with the limitations. And out of that will usually come something really brilliant. And if it doesn't, you move on. It's that simple. Okay.